Mr. Smart, come on up. And Jada, why don't you come up too? And you can have you're on the hot seat today, by the way, for the first part of class.
Okay.
All right. You can just have a seat. So, Will, this is Jada. Jada, this is Will. Will and I are going to co-facilitate the class today, but right now he's going to be a volunteer. So can you introduce yourself?
My name is Jada Copeland.
Here, hang on. Hold it right like that.
Hello.
Yep.
Okay. My name is Jada Copeland, and I'm a sophomore studying corporate innovation and entrepreneurship. And I'm going to try and get some minors in sustainability and sociology, actually.
Oh, damn.
So this is my first sociology class, though. So we'll see how that goes.
It might be your last. Oh, my God. All right. Mr. Smart, you introduce yourself, then I'm going to introduce you also.
All right. Hey, everyone. How you doing today? My name is Will Smart, and I am a recruit.
Wait, hang on. You didn't get a response from them, bro.
Yeah,
Get a response from them, man.
How we feeling today? Okay, that's the energy I'm looking for. Look, my name is Will Smart, and I am a recruitment director for Teach for America. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little later, but I'm also a proud Penn State alum. So you already know how I'm coming. We are? That's what I'm talking about. So it's a little bit about me. So I'm from Philly. When I was here at Penn State, I was involved in a lot of things. I graduated with degrees in psychology and global international studies, minors in sociology, economics. I was involved in World in Conversation and other orgs on campus. And after I graduated, I wanted to make an impact. And so I started off my career as a teacher. And I taught high school chemistry back in my hometown of Philly for 2 years with Teach for America. And now I recruit for them. And so that's just a little bit about me.
Dude, something else about Will. So I met Will, you were 17, right? 17. First off. And he was sitting in the front row, and I asked some kind of question, I don't know what it was, and you started answering it, and your answer was so animated and interesting that I just said, wait, hang on, man, stand up. I gave him the mic, and I told him to stand up, and I just sat down where he was sitting, like this. And I'm like, and it was about 10 minutes. And you were just going off for about 10 minutes. It was really awesome. And that's how I met this guy as a really special human being, and then had a chance to work with him and really enjoyed bringing you back into class. But today you're on the hot seat, along with Jada. So can we go to let's go to the question that we have. So here's a question for you all, right? If you could learn some truths or something, right? Different things, something. It could be one thing, different truths. That, you know, that's would really just blow up your world and what you think is true and not true. And would you, like, you knew it. You just know, like, so we're going to start with you. If you, like, you just know, man, I can explore this, but if it does, it's going to really destroy a lot of what I think about the world, and I'm going to have to reshape. Like, would you do it?
Honestly, I think that I'm the type of person that already tries to do that. I'm very, like, inquisitive, and I really like to, like, know the full story before I, like, jump to any sort of, like, conclusion. And I really, really appreciate, like, learning. And so I think that, like, if I had the option to know the truth about, like, whatever I wanted to do, like, whatever I wanted to know, I think that it would be more beneficial to me than harmful. And I think that for a lot of people, like, sometimes ignorance is bliss, but, like, for me, it's more like I want to know, and, like, that makes me form my opinions better, and it makes me, like, act differently depending on, like, what I know versus, like, what I don't know, and, like, how I think about things.
Okay. All right. So, wait, and what are you, an ENFJ? What are
I am an ENTJ.
ENTJ.
That is the rarest personality type in women in the world.
And it's sort of an extreme leader or extreme something, like what?
Yeah, it's kind of like you know how there's like different, like each letter stands for like something different.
Yep.
So mine's more of like a leadership sort of like driven, but it's also like I'm logically driven, but I want to do the right thing, if that makes sense.
Okay, all right, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Will, how about you, man? How do you think about this? You're, how about you? Let me just ask. Yeah. Something like facts, different thing.
And for a quick disclaimer, I did not have a pre-prepared answer for this. And so when I think about this question, I think it's like, y'all know that Drake album, if you're reading this, it's too late. That's what I kind of think of when I hear this, when I think of this question, right? Because I feel like, similar to Jade, I've already begun down this path of just like learning truths that begin to like really deconstruct my understanding of the world. Right? I'm like, even Sam's email, like, I unlearn. And the thing is, it's like, it sounds like really cool. A lot of us think like, oh yeah, like I'm all about facts. I'm all about objectivity. I'm really about that. But honestly, learning the truth is really hard. It's very difficult. It's very painful. And when it deconstructs everything that you think you know is true and real, it's a completely different world and reality. But there is a power in working towards learning the truth or working towards truth, right? And
all right, hang on. Let's go.
I'm
I'm
not
going to give you an example.
Much, but
Yeah. All right, go to the next slide. All right, so something I've been getting into recently, it's past few days, not past month, I guess. So one of the blessings and the curses of being me is that I have people, regardless of what I talk about, I have people emailing me with different versions of whatever it is that is said in this class. And so I have to be really, and they oftentimes present facts and present data, and they send things to me. And sometimes I don't have time to go through it all, but I have time to some. So this guy, Jeff, who watches the stream, recently, about a month ago, sent me this link to this video called the Trayvon Martin hoax. Okay? And he's like, hey, man, listen. And this guy is, he's not like he's just a guy. He's trying to figure it out. He's like, hey, can you watch this? Like, I trust you. Like, can you watch it and check it out? All right? So I didn't watch it yet. But I watched these two guys analyzing it. And then I watched these two guys analyzing the death of George Floyd. And these two guys are John McWhorter and Glenn Lowry. And these are two really smart academics who are both seeking the truth. And they're not what you would call, they're what people would call conservative, but they would call them conservative in the way that people would call me conservative. That I'm willing to make a point here or here or here if the point needs to be made. And so they watched these two documentaries, and these documentarians looked at all of the information from Trayvon Martin and the transcript and the 911 call and so much information in the death of George Floyd. And the documentarians got to a place where they said, yo, man, a lot of what we think happened maybe didn't happen in the way that we think that it did. And some of the basic truths about the deaths of these two, in the case of Trayvon, young man, in the case of George Floyd, older man, the people who, that maybe the police officer, Derek Chauvin, kind of got railroaded a little bit. And I'm thinking, like, how's this guy going to get railroaded? Because you saw his knee on the neck of George Floyd. And Trayvon Martin, it's like, a lot happened in that trial that's like, yo, right? So these two really smart gentlemen, they're academics at Brown University, Columbia University, right? So and so I'm watching what they're saying, because I'm going to say, like, well, if these guys find this information worth pursuing, then I gotta pursue this. And so let me ask you, in the world, if you watch this documentary on George Floyd, you might get to the place where you would say, hey, this police officer, Derek Chauvin, kind of got railroaded a little bit. You might get there. And the question is, are you willing to, you want to do that? The whole world is like, this guy is guilty, man. He had his knee on the neck of George Floyd and he murdered him. And so the question is, so you're like me, right? So you know me, and I know you, and we have deep trust for each other. Right. But I'm like, shit. Do I watch this doc? Do I really watch it? Or do I? Okay, so now answer that question.
But then my question to you would be, when you ask yourself that question, do I watch it or do I not watch it? What are you looking to get out of it? Like, so if you were to watch it, what would you want to get out of it? And if you don't watch it, what would you be afraid of getting out of it?
So, dude, see, that's why, man. My wife, dude, Lori, this guy was one of my wife's biggest, most important proteges in terms of learning to ask good questions. That's such a good question. Well, first off, as a teacher, my job is to push. Like, I can't be spouting. So last class, we had a class and we talked about, George Floyd came up and we talked about the murder of George Floyd. If you watch the documentary, it's like, maybe murdered isn't the right verb. And I'm like, as a teacher, I'm be telling the truth, whatever I can get close to the truth. And so I just feel like I feel an obligation to not lead people in directions that would be really wrong. And so that's the biggest reason I want to. The second reason is I just don't want to be dumb. Like, I never want to reproduce things that are wrong. I don't know, that aren't thought out. So that's what I would want to. That's for me. But one more thing, and then I want to hear you respond. But my time is limited. I mean, I got a long list of things like this that I could be exploring, and I'm just like, oh shit. But this came up because of last class, so I said I'm going to ask Will this. All right, go ahead.
And so my response is that, Sam, as an educator, I think you're doing a very powerful job with your class, because your job here is really to get students to learn how to think. And one of the ways that you don't learn how to think is when you consume like one perspective and you just follow that one through and through without critically analyzing it, right? So the fact that like, oh, I want to watch this video to expose my students to a different perspective, that's actually the beginning of thinking, right? Being exposed to different perspectives. But then the next level is to start to critically wrestle with it and start to understand, okay, what's behind these perspectives, right? So these two academics are seeing and are analyzing the lens of Trayvon Martin, but it's through what lens are they looking at it, right? Like the cameras are taking pictures of us with, right? We look at the picture and we say, oh, that's an objective picture, but no, it has a certain lens that actually like details and shows the image in a certain way as opposed to a lens of a different millimeters, right? But if you're not into photography, you're not going to know that, and you're just going to think, oh, every picture is objectively true. But if you study the science of photography, you will learn it's not that. Okay. So we got to like zoom out even more.
Okay, right? I got you, man. But you're slipping. You're like being slippery here, man. Dude, right? I'm asking you, are you willing to watch this documentary and get to the end, and you might say, Derek Chauvin, the cop, didn't murder George Floyd? You might have to say that.
If I watch this documentary and I come off with the perspective that Derek Chauvin didn't murder, right? If I have that perspective at the end of it, then I'm not afraid of that. Because I know that the discourse in this work was not about the indictment of an individual, right? Sociology is about systems. It's an indictment of an unjust system.
Yeah,
so
but
maybe
listen.
maybe the pundits were wrong about this, but it doesn't excuse the other example. So it's not, I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah, but listen, man, but you understand as well as me that the death of George Floyd, it was one of the single most powerful moments in race history in the United States of the past since 1968. So it's not just that it produced a sort of a new conversation, but it's like, but what it would mean for the way you see the world, right? That's also the thing, man. Because what it means for the way I see the world, and for me as a white guy and you as a black guy, the consequences are pretty serious. Okay, so hang on. So we're gonna sit there. So for you, so you're a Christian, right? Like you said you were pretty seriously Christian? Like it's very meaningful to you.
Yes.
Okay, so can you go to the next slide? So listen, have you ever heard of this textual criticism? Do you have any idea what that is?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's just like it's the hermeneutics of the Bible, right? It's like
The what?
of studying of religious texts, right? In this case, biblical hermeneutics. So it's like you want to try to, first off, you have things in the past the people said, and at some point in time later, they got written down in one language, and then they get translated into another language, and then they get copied, and they get copied, and they get copied, and we got to figure out what actually was said. First off, did the events actually happen? Because like we don't know, you have no idea if they happened or not, right? And so then it's all of these pieces, right? So you read the Bible, right? You believe in Jesus?
I do. I
Do you-
try to read as much as I can.
Okay, you got to talk louder. Then.
I try to read as much as I can. I don't have like the Bible memorized, but like.
Okay,
I
so
try
when
to-
you read words of Jesus, you're assuming that they're words of Jesus.
Yes.
Or Paul or Mark or any of the Gospels or whoever it is. And the stories, are they real stories?
I would say that they are real stories. I would say that God also like uses like some of the stories in the Bible to like explain other things.
Okay, to explain other things. Like they're parables and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so listen. So what's interesting see that little snippet, that photo right there? That's about the size of a credit card. And on that is Greek writing. And it was discovered in, I think, 1937 by this archaeology team. I think the guy's name was John Ryland, okay, around Egypt. And it's the earliest piece of the New Testament that they have, okay? And it's from John. And that's it. That's all you get. That's Greek lettering. And they take it back through carbon testing and so on to somewhere between 125 to 175 of the Common Era. That means for sure it was written 100 years after the death of Jesus, okay? That's it. That's all we have. After that, we have nothing. We have a full Bible. I mean, the full New Testament at some point, but that comes much later. So this is it, man. That's the earliest, and that was 100 years after Jesus would have lived and died, okay? So now, so here's the problem for you. Like, would you be willing, like, I took a dive into Christian textual criticism about 10 years ago. And for about a year, I read probably 4 or 5 books and tons of articles, and I was just deep diving in to figure out how much of the Bible is real and how much of it is not. The Old Testament, the New Testament. And I discovered that. I'm like, that's it, man. That's it. All those stories that you got, they like, first off, 100 years went by, and then we get 150 probably, because they think it's more like 175 of the Common Era. And you get a little bit of that. And then, 50 or 100 years later, you get a little bit more. And you get nothing. You got nothing in writing that says, like, hey, for sure, we know this. All you got is your faith that you have it. But you got nothing that you can say, like, hey, this is it. And my question to you is, so for you, you're like, oh yeah, I want to know the truth, right? Well, I spent again, about, I don't know, 8 months, maybe a year reading. And I got to the end and I said, wow, man, if I were a serious Christian, like if you really study this stuff, you get to the end and you can only ask yourself, all you can say is like, wow, whoa, wow. So my question to you is, this is your faith, right? This is your faith. And I'm not telling you to abandon your faith. I'm none of that. I'm just asking you, what would keep you from making a deep dive? Because basically, in a way, like you just have stories that are, it's like, it might as well be fiction.
I think faith for me, I think it's really hard to like base faith and like what happens when you die off of strictly facts, because nobody knows what happens when you die. You know what I mean? So like there's not like, I don't necessarily think that like there's one right or wrong answer, but for me, I would say that the whole point of faith is not to base it off of like factual evidence, just because like there isn't much factual evidence to prove what happens when you die. You know what I mean?
There's none.
So yeah, so like for
Well,
like
no, there's
each
actually some. I have had conversations with people who communicate with the other side. I've
well,
had
how do you know
conversations
that
with
that's
dead
the
people.
truth? You know what I mean? Like it's
No, I know it.
It's this whole thing about like searching for truth, and I think that like in that sort of search, you have to acknowledge that like nothing that we really know about anything is like the objective truth.
Okay, I got you, but you just kind of did a will thing. I'm asking you this. Would you be willing, what would keep you as someone who really wants to know the truth, as you said that you did, that I could give you the name of 4 or 5 books and be like, all right, man, I'm just going to dig into these and I'm going to figure this out. What would keep you from doing that?
Honestly, nothing. Like I would be open to it. Like I would read your books, you know what I mean? And like I would form an opinion based off of what I read, but I wouldn't, I think because of like the faith that I have now and like I've been Christian my whole life. Like I was raised in the church, but like I was the only person in my family to like go to church, so it wasn't like a forced thing. It was like more of like my own will, you know what I mean? But I think that you should look, and I think that you should, like, the more knowledge you have, like the better.
Okay, but
you'll be.
hang on. I'm sorry to cut you off again. You're saying you should look. And I'm
Yes.
like, yeah,
But you can't blame people
no,
for
I'm,
their
I'm
answers.
not asking people, I'm asking you. I'm telling you, if you read these books,
I would read the books.
and if you do,
I would.
the faith that you have today is going to be different.
It
And-
might be different.
No, it's going to be different. It might be stronger.
Oh, I see.
It's not that it's right. It might be stronger because it's not that. It's just that it's like you're going to walk on the edge of a cliff. This is like Will watching this documentary. It's going to be different. It's going to have a new meaning. It might be yours. But this is the thing. So both what I got from both of you is we really need to look at things that we're not familiar with, and we need to check this out and check that out. But it's like, it's one thing to say this. It's another thing to take the risk and really look at some things that I'm pretty certain I disagree with, or I'm pretty certain I don't believe. But if I do walk over into this, my world might blow the F up. And by the way, people on the stream, I'm not trying to get her to not be a Christian, okay? And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to have all sorts of Christians who sending me Bible stuff. And after class, I'm going to have some of you Christians sending me Bible stuff. Listen, that's good, right? This is not a critique of Christianity. This is just like, oh, damn, it's that. You're a Christian too, right? All right, you got it. You're with me, okay? All right. So anyway, listen, I really like your answers. It's awesome. And I'm not pushing you to watch it, but I think the way you responded is kind of the way that it's a nice response. It's a good response. No, it's a really good response. And there's a cliff that you can step off of. And when you step off of that cliff, you don't know where you're going to land. And like, damn. What's that?
I think that's the hardest part of it because I feel like a lot of people who do have opinions about things often skip over the fact that like they're like they might be wrong, and so like they do everything in their power to avoid like risking that chance. So instead of like looking into things that might like argue with that or go against what they believe, they're gonna find more things that just strengthen their argument. Whereas like if you were to send me those books, like I would want to read them just because like let's say that my faith did come out like stronger than it was before, like I would be able to reference like the book you gave me, and like I would be able to like look into that more and like figure out things that like I wouldn't, you know what I mean, like how to like dismantle that.
Yeah, but you might abandon your faith.
I might,
You
but
might get to the end and be like, yeah, this is a bunch of bunk.
I think that's a possibility. But at the same time, if I were to like leave, like if I were to read the book and be like, wow, like damn, like that was tough, like I should probably like I would want to like look into the things in the book because
Okay.
I don't want to abandon my faith, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
since I already have
Well, hang on though. How old are you?
I am 19, turning 20 in
Dude,
June.
why not abandon your faith? Hang on, people in the stream, relax for a second, okay? Why not abandon your faith? You're only 19, dude. You happen to be born in this society. Maybe you're supposed to be Hindu or Buddhist or something. Like, maybe you're supposed to follow, you know, like you're a shaman waiting to come out. Like, what's wrong with abandoning your faith? Like, if you start with, you're 19 years old. If you start with putting walls around where you might want to be, like you've already really limited what's possible. Hang on, I'm going to leave you with that. You don't have to respond to it. Just,
I have an answer. I'm gonna think.
yeah, you think about it. Later in the semester, you come up. Well, you know what's going to do? I'm going to give you one of the books. I'm going to bring one in. And then later in the semester, toward the end, you're going to come up and you're going to be like, all right, what'd you get out of it? And you decide.
I can do that. I will.
All right, man. All right. Thanks. All right. All right. All right, Mom. Thanks. Okay, ready? Hey, man, they're going to take the table now. You and I are. Well, you guys can share. Hey, why don't you give Will a lapel mic, and why don't they take the? Yeah, you're gonna just walk around with me. Okay. You take that side, I'll take this side. Why don't you give Javier that mic? All right, man. Let's introduce yourselves.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Grace Mao. I am a junior here studying mechanical engineering.
Awesome. You're also a Christian, by the way.
I am also a Christian.
Were you challenged?
Yes.
Were you challenged by that?
I was fired up. I'm like ready now.
Are there any Christians who are pissed at me? Are there any Christians who are annoyed at me, by the way? Are we good? Dude, you are you really annoyed at me? You're just saying that. You're good? All right. All right. Dude, you're all right there, right? All right. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Pozo. I'm a junior studying computer science, and I'm a Christian too.
Yeah. All right.
My name is Zach. I'm a sophomore. I'm a marketing major, and I grew up Christian. I don't know like how much I am now, but
Dude, after that last segment, maybe you're not at all. Hey, hey. So listen, Will. So what I'd like for you to do is we're just going to ask some questions. We're going to go around on this. So I want to talk. Initially, we're going to talk about what we used to call affirmative action. Okay, but the Supreme Court ruled recently that you can't select students to the university, any school really, but university is really the focus, using the criteria of their race or ancestry or culture, okay? So that cannot lead the way. So you can't say, you can have a certain number of black students or or brown students or Latino students, whatever the case is, right? And you just can't use that. You have to use other things instead of that. That's just not acceptable. What do you guys think about that? And your job is to just be thinking of questions too. But what do y'all think about that? The Supreme Court ruled that, so the universities have to comply.
I think in a perfect world, like that idea would be good. But the thing is, there's more like nuance and stuff when it comes to races and religions, or not races and religions, but races and cultures in the United States. Like a lot of different types of people are like disenfranchised for the last 200 years, whether it be black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. So I feel like trying to do affirmative action, like the idea of it, to try to make the playing field even for everyone was a good idea. I think now they're trying to get rid of it because ideally it should be like that, where, you know, everyone should be treated equal going into college, but we also had things like slavery and, or not immigration, but people like colonialism, like stuff like that.
Okay. Javier. How about you, man?
Yeah.
What's your gut?
I would say that, as Zach mentioned, it would be nice to think like everything could be like even for everyone, that everyone could have the same chance and everything. But the actual truth, and I will be more like in the logic side, like a statistical side, there will always be trends, and you cannot actually like try to directly affect a trend. It will keep being there. You can try to, it's like imagine you wanna have, let's say, 25% Latino in a community or in a college. No matter how much you try, eventually it will just switch or shift. You will get more, you will get less. You can try to prevent any kind of bias, but as a humans, we're already biased by 1,000 million variables. So trying to think that we cannot be biased about a thing, I think it's like really plausible.
Uh-huh. Grace, what's your gut feeling about the Supreme Court decision?
I mean, I'd agree with both of them. Like it would be really nice, of course, for it all to be equal, but this world is unfair, and the trends will fall as they do, and I don't know how much power, like I don't know if yes, it's a Supreme Court ruling, but I don't know if the universities will truly follow that.
Well,
Like,
okay, so here's a question. So here's what's kind of interesting. So this guy grew up in North Philly, right? North Philly? So you grew up without means, without resources. Yeah, you can just.
Yeah, so I had, there was some, but in general, the schools in Philly don't have resources. Like Philly is it's the most underfunded big city in the country.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think so.
For education?
For education, I think so.
Okay, but now we're talking leveling the playing field at some level,
Yeah.
right? But you come from means, right? And you're upper middle class. So these two guys here, so you got the Latino guy and the black guy, Afro-Caribbean, right? You're African-American, Jamaican, you're kind of a mix, right? Both your parents are Jamaican? Okay. So the Latino guy and your compadres here, right? They're relatively speaking, certainly relative to the world, they're rich, right? And so what's your background?
I'd say I'm also like middle class, upper middle class, I think.
Okay, all right. So if we have so as a white woman, if we have some kind of affirmative, some program that's going to help to even the playing field, these two guys are going to benefit from it. You're not. But how do you think about that? Because they got money, man. What the hell? This guy didn't. But I mean, how do you think about that? This guy here, dude. Can I just? He's a money guy. I mean, he's a Latino. This guy Javier, he's Latino. Oh, he's Latino. That means you start thinking, it's like Mexican coming over the border, hanging out, down south of Texas, trying to figure out how he can scrape some pesos together to buy a taco. You know what I mean? Dude, this dude's rich, but you're going to benefit from some kind of affirmative action stuff and as well here. So how about that? I don't want to start a fight between you, but come on, man. Go ahead, bro.
Like I would like to say like at least in like my Latino perspective, and I hope like there will be a bunch of Latinos here too. As much as we're getting in debt, I think a lot of like U.S. citizens too are getting in debt on like college in general. And I would say like yeah, I'm pretty privileged, and I'm not gonna lie about that. Like in the country that I live, like my family is from Peru, but now they moved to Chile and now they're living in Canada. They would say like okay, like his family is doing good, and of course it is. But I'm not really saying that for my whole life I was thinking about coming to like US and things like that. But I think even though we will keep trying to make the field leveled, if in order to be like rich people, there needs to be poor. In order to be someone that's good, there's need to be something to be bad. So there will be always have to be some kind of contrast. Even though we don't like it, even though we wish it was like all playing field and for everyone even, it will never happen. No matter how much we try.
Okay, so but if we have if we have some kind of affirmative action, like one of these programs, right, benefit programs, when you check, if we have that here and you check the box off that says Latino, you're going to automatically go in this column over here.
Yeah, but by getting that check, by getting that like free way to go through that route, you're even making the gap even wider in your field, like in your place with your people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so in that sense, the Supreme Court decision maybe is a good decision. It's like, yeah, stop doing this, man.
It is a good decision in paper, but that's all what it will be. Like I would think.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds nice. I wish, but it won't.
You
really,
wish what?
I wish it will like word as we're talking about. Like it might help other people to actually say like, okay, like have this chance. But if someone is living their entire life just to see one chance, it's like, are you actually living, or are you trying to fulfill a ideal of what you are?
Hey, okay, I hear you, Zach. What are you thinking about this? Because you under a program in which Penn State seeks or gives something a little bit special in some way, right? What we're trying to do, because you said it earlier, I think, like we want to level. This is what Will is doing here. He's going to talk about it in a little bit. We want to level the playing field per se. Like the more we get, even if like Will grew up without means, but let's say Will but now he's doing very well, and he has a kid. He has children. His children are going to move up. So like because he got certain opportunities here, he just grows and it's like, okay. But what do you do about the fact that we have these programs that just seem like they're unfair? To, like, for example, Jada's lower class, working class. Like, you would get something, but she wouldn't. How do you manage that in your mind?
I think you kind of said it though, because like for Will, for example, you said he grew up without means, and now that he's able to go to college because of these programs, his kids will be able to do better in school. And I think that's part of, leveling the playing field, because I can speak for black people in general, because black people went through slavery, they went through redlining and stuff when it comes to real estate, being able to apply for loans, credit cards, just basic human rights, where a lot of other people or a lot of other races were able to build their credit, like have families like set up, have alumni in colleges and be able to get in that way. So I think if you have affirmative action where you have, where he said that he came from somewhere with no means, and now that he's able to go to college with this program, now his kids will be set up better.
Okay, but how about you though, right? So if you're when you were applying to college, did you get to the part of what's your background and be like, or you might be eligible for certain, I don't know, a scholarship or something. Did you say like, no, I'm not going. I can't do that. I don't need that. I mean, because even though black people went through all sorts of. And by the way, last class, I said something to the effect of racism against black people in the U.S. didn't even start until 1865. Yeah, after slavery, dude. And my point of saying that, it was a rhetorical statement to get people to be like, yo, you mean it got worse after slavery? Like, you know what I mean? So when you say that, this is where I'm coming from. Like, yeah, man, yeah, people went through a lot, but now you reach a certain place. So like, did you then with Penn State be like, no, don't put me in line for that scholarship because I'm...
I mean, I wasn't given any scholarships. When they asked for my race on my college application, obviously I put what race I was, but also I'm an outlier when it comes to black people in the United States. I'm an outlier when it comes to black people in the United States. Most people can't, come from the background where they say they had their parents be able to afford to pay for school. So I think using me for an example isn't really a strong case because I don't represent the majority of the population of black people.
Well, yeah, but listen, man, half of all black Americans are middle class, okay? And then the other half of black Americans, you have poor black Americans, and then you have really rich black Americans. So like, so keep that in mind, right? Like it's not...
I think even then when you talk about like the average black person in middle class, there's a reason why you would see more black people in Section 8 housing and worse housing and worse education rather than like white people. It's because of these things. Like history happened.
Yeah.
And we're still feeling the effects of it now. And I think it's up to us as the government that caused it in the first place, to reconcile it and make it better.
Okay, so hang on. Bro, he just made a comment about like Section 8 and poor house. If you don't know, like that's like government-sponsored housing and so on, more black people in Section 8. You ever been to Section 8 white areas, by the way? You ever been to areas in the U.S. where white people are living in Section 8?
Like, that's through some, but yeah, like.
What's it like, man?
No, not really. Like, I mean, like, I'm talking about like really like trailer parks for the most part.
I'm talking about really poor white people.
I haven't seen like too much of like Section 8. I went to school with like some poor white people.
Yeah.
But they were still better off than poor black people. Somewhere. Like, so for instance, one of my friends, his mom worked at Kmart, but when his grandfather passed, they inherited his house. That's the difference than my other friend he was white, and my other friend who was black, yeah, both his parents worked fast food, but they didn't have that generational wealth.
And there's a story of black Americans not being able to get loans to buy their own property and so on. And this is one of those things, like if you don't know about it, you don't.
And this is like one of those things that like, I really like this question of like, what are we afraid of or what we're trying to hear and like, or how we try to think, because when it comes to this affirmative action conversation, it's just like, oh, but it's just not fair. And it's just like, okay, why is it not fair? And it's like, oh, because you're taking away an opportunity from me and I worked hard. Okay, okay, but it's like, are you really asking the right questions? Or did you study your history? Did you understand how affirmative action like was for like years given to like people that had white skin and the different types of affirmative action programs that are in place, but we focus on race? Like, why aren't we asking questions like, okay, is affirmative action only by race? Are there other forms of affirmative action? Because there really are, right? Like legacy admissions, like Ivy League schools hold a certain percent. Way more, like Penn State, for reference, has only, 4% of black people that attend here? Legacy admissions anywhere between 20 to 40%. So your seat isn't like really like getting taken away from like this person is getting taken away from that person that looks just like you and didn't really have to work that hard. So we're really not asking critical questions when it comes to this. And we have to really like ask ourselves, what is my assumption of the world when I'm like triggered by certain questions? So that's like what I think of when I hear this debate and people are like, oh, victim blaming, this, that, and the third. It's like, you're not really doing enough thinking for me. That's what I think.
All right, man. All right. That was the moment I sat down. All right. Dude.
We're talking about all three of y'all too, but also the professor, talking about how in an ideal world, it would be nice that everybody could be on the same playing field, right? But that would be within that generation. But if we were to think about the rich, it's usually the parents who are rich. And the parents of course, the super rich through nepotism may have accumulated wealth, but a lot of those parents work their ass off to provide their children that set amount of wealth, if it's abundant. So if we were to even that playing field by promoting the poor or lessening the rich, isn't that also like ignoring the parents' effort, all they have invested to provide their children the better upper hand up in the society? And do you think that would be okay?
Do you have an answer to that?
So this like makes me think of like my grandma, because she was a first generation American and they came through Ellis Island and literally like from Ukraine. It was just like my great grandma and her 3 daughters, and they had nothing. And then like you see me now as like my like Baba's great granddaughter at Penn State getting this like education. That's because of the hard work that was put in the generations before me. And like I'm not gonna, it's like hard because I feel like I can't totally like speak into this topic because I have been like blessed, and my whole life all I've known is like my needs have been met.
But let me add something onto it, something that Will just said. There are these structural constraints historically. And one of the things, my point about, by the way, what do you guys, when I say like racism against black people didn't even begin until 1865, or what do you think I mean? What's that mean to you when you hear that? And I'm going to respond to this.
I think it's just kind of like a shock statement where like you say something to like try to catch people's attention.
Yeah.
Because obviously it didn't, like there was still slavery for a reason before that. But after 1865, it was less of just like, it was more of like a structured racism in the sense where laws were passed to try to like create the illusion where, okay, well now you're not slaves anymore, but still you're passing laws, can't take loans, can't get houses, can't go to college.
There's so many things, right? Like your grandparents come over and they're able to get these loans and live in certain areas and do all sorts of things. Not just easy, but far more easily because of structural racism against Poles and Ukrainians wasn't the same, right? And so and then those changes happened down the line.
I would say when you mentioned that statement, for me, at least for my background, like in Peru, at least for my generation and what I've lived, racism hasn't ever been like a problem in there. Like we always just, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, Peru's perfect, we treat everyone with respect and stuff, but it's more about like, and I will say this like pretty like softly, like in Peru we mention the words that are mentioned here in like common sense. Like we would just say it to our best friend in a really calm way, and then when we come here to United States and we hear people talking about the N-word, and in Peru it's just so normal and regular that anyone can say it, and then it's such a sensitive topic here. But I understand that it comes from like there's a history, and just because I'm not part of that history, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be like worried about it. So I'm interested in learning more about it.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Hey, can you go to the next slide?
I wanted to respond too, because I really like that question, because it really goes into that theme of just like, my parents worked hard, they fought for every opportunity for their children, and I'm the result of that, right? And that's what I say, it goes back to those assumptions, right? Because like I'm not even gonna say a certain statement, but I would just ask a question, right? So if your parents work hard and they deserve those opportunities, I would just say, like, when we look at affirmative action in this conversation, who does not work hard? Right?
And everyone thinks that.
Because it's like, okay, so if someone doesn't make that much money, but like let's say they're working class, but their parents are working 16 hours a day, but your parents are like making 6 figures and they only work 8 hours a day, then who is working harder?
Okay, I want to throw.
You know what I mean? So
I want to throw another one onto that.
Yeah.
So people say, hey, the problem with things with these programs based on race is that they're not fair because you're giving something to somebody that they didn't really earn. Well, nepotism is kind of not fair. Like you know, your parents, everything the 3 of you experience from your parents. It's like just because you're born to that family, you could have been born to a really poor family. Exactly. Like nepotism is, getting something because you know somebody. Exactly. Like, well, that's not fair either.
Exactly.
Like, Hang on, I want to just ask this question. What do you think the percentage, banning race in college admissions is mostly a good thing. What do you think, what percentage of black adults agree with that? What do you think?
Around 50%.
I think depending on how you think and how you take it, it can go like either really high or really low. But I would say like 60.
All right. Grace, do you have any thought?
About 60, 50,
Yeah?
yeah.
All right. So it's 52. So here's my question. So I just want to throw this out there. We have this idea, and I said this kind of last class. There's just like the two gentlemen whose photos I put up, Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter. People in the United States, we have this idea that, all white people are this way, and all Asians are that way, and all black people are like this over here. And it's an immense complexity of ideas. 52% of black Americans are saying, get rid of any kind of using race in college admissions. Asians are only 63%, and Asian Americans are the ones who get hurt the most because the bar is much higher for Asians. And so, if there's any discrimination in the world of college admissions, it's against Asians, not against anybody else. I mean, it's mostly against Asians, right? So what do 52% of black Americans see that other people don't see? What are they saying? Like, get rid of that, man. Don't use that anymore. Just judge me on the basis of my test scores and my essay and who I am. Don't use any of that. I don't want to be seen as, I don't want any benefits at all. What are they seeing?
I would say it's just like a basic thing that we all try to do in some way or another. Like for me, being a Latino and just knowing that like the amount of, not debt, but the amount of money that my family is paying, like I would try to relate with like the black Americans here with how much or how hard you need to actually work to be actually able to outstand or to show that you're actually beyond what the average is. So I would say like maybe that 52% is just trying to say like I can stand by myself, I can do this alone. I don't need like, oh, poor him, let's give him something. Like I can do this by myself.
Okay, but Zach, I want to go back to what you said about what both of you said, right? But the playing field isn't really level. And these people are saying that's okay. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter. Just get rid of it. We'll deal with leveling it out ourselves.
I think my idea as to why a lot of these percentages are saying like they think banning it is a good thing because affirmative action causes colleges to like set a quota and they try to hit a certain amount of students per, type of race, type of culture, and it takes away from letting students in that have better scores, which is why I say like in a perfect world, it would be good to have, just have nothing, like let everybody in based on whatever, like on their college scores, GPA, yada, yada, yada. But there's more kinks to work out when it comes to affirmative action. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, these kinds of things. There's a lot of kinks to work out. And bro, let me ask you, as a college, and you're going to introduce Teach for America in a second.
Yeah, no
so
problem.
Zach just said it might lead people with some higher scores to be pushed out and letting in people with slightly lower scores.
Yeah,
but
that's
as a
what they-
guy who is in this world, first off, I don't know the difference between an A- student and a B student, to be perfectly honest with you, man. I don't know. You know what I mean? I have no idea. And every job I've ever gotten, except the Penn State job, has been based on nepotism, because I knew somebody.
Exactly.
Every single thing that's ever happened in the world of work for me is nepotism. I knew someone, except this
Exactly.
current job that I have. I showed up
Exactly.
one day and they said, all right.
Yeah.
So can you just respond to what he
Yeah,
just said
no, for
about
sure.
test scores? Like, are they really like, what are you looking at in a
No,
student?
I mean, like,
Because you're hiring these people.
yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's one of those things. It's like it's like when I hear your responses and I think of like the 52%, it's, I don't know, it just comes to this illusion of like meritocracy. I just think of like time and time again, and like when I say that, it just really means it's just like, oh, like you know, like when we have a certain quota, undeserving people will get it, but really not enough deserving people have that opportunity. And the thing is, when it comes to like nepotism,
Wait, hang on. That opportunity, bro, there's so many opportunities in here for students to have. Maybe they don't get that one opportunity,
No,
but
it's-
if you work hard though,
Yeah.
you're going to get other ones.
if they work hard enough, they're gonna get the opportunity. Yeah,
You
And so
got,
that's
even
why I
though
think-
you're going to get some opportunities. You may
some
not get that
opportunity.
one that you
Even
think.
if you don't get the one that you want, you're gonna get some.
Okay.
Right.
So what's the illusion of meritocracy?
the-
It sounds
the-
like it works.
Yeah, the illusion. It sounds like it works. That's the issue, right? So it's two things. In that 52%, I think obviously I'm not them, but I see two things. One, like I believe in my merit. I can work hard, and like when I work hard, I'm gonna get those opportunities, right? But it's also two, they don't understand. Like we hear about inequity and inequality, but we don't really understand how unequal it is, how
That's true.
inequitable it is.
That's
and
true.
Like, we grossly underestimate
That's
that. So
true,
even when
man.
it comes to jobs, and I'll tell you this, because when I was a student, I wanted to believe. Y'all heard that saying? It doesn't matter what you know, it's who you know. Y'all heard that? Yeah. I didn't want to believe that, but when you get into the job market, especially during the pandemic, when people were getting laid off, my friends who were recent grads, they were top of their class, couldn't get jobs for 1, maybe even 2 years. But the friends who actually knew some people or knew the right person or had a connection or had a professor to speak to them got jobs. And
Oh,
some
you
of my
mean
friends are
like
still
you.
employed.
Like you,
Yeah,
'cause you know
exactly.
me.
Because I
Yeah.
had even me.
No,
like,
hang
I
on,
had
no, hang-
certain opportunities. It's not like having opportunities doesn't take away from my merit, but it's also recognizing that some people, even if they fit the bill, do not have that opportunity.
All right,
So
hang
that's
on.
what
I just
think of
want to
when
say
I hear
one
that.
thing really fast. I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's a really good point, but I want to make the point that this is not the dualism piece that we talked about last class.
Right.
It's not one or the other.
Yeah, no,
There
it's both,
is
yeah.
who you know. But if
Right.
you continue to just keep working hard and plugging away, the opportunities come.
Sometimes.
No, they're always going to come. The alternative is not work hard, and then you're not going to, the opportunities
The
won't
alternative
come.
is to not work hard, but you can't not work hard, right? But working hard is not a guarantee.
Okay,
That's
it's a guarantee that you're going to be better off.
That's the problem.
Okay, but
right?
hang on.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a dualism. It's not saying it's either or. It's saying yes, we need to work hard, and we're saying at the same time that it's true that this inequity exists.
Okay,
You
I
have
got
to
no,
work
I got
hard.
you, I got you.
You know what I mean?
No, I got
So
you.
it's like-
but if you, okay, hang on. Here, listen to this. And then you got to talk about TFA for a second.
Yeah, I'll talk about it for a
You're
little
better off to work hard than to not work hard, and
Yeah.
most everybody does.
Yes.
Let's be clear. All right, bro, listen, man. Tell him why you're here. You got like.
How much time do I
Yeah,
got?
you got 5 minutes. You
5
got 3 minutes. Tell him why you're here.
All right. Well, look, I hope you enjoyed the discussion and the questions between Sam and I. Obviously, there's a lot more to this topic than we can cover in this class, but the whole point is to just like push us to start to think. All right. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the work that I do here with Teach for America. And so Teach for America, a lot of people think that this is just a teaching like pipeline program, but it's so much more than that. At Teach for America, we're a nonprofit leadership development organization dedicated to finding passionate leaders who want to improve the conditions of our communities, both inside and outside of education, to really change our society, right? We recognize and we see that educational inequity or educational inequality, right? The fact that there are unequal opportunities available for our children, unequal resources available for our children across the nation based on the base of race, class, and zip code, both urban and rural, is one of the greatest injustices facing our country today, right? Every year, 1.2 million children are dropping out of high school. That's 7,000 students a day, or one student every 26 seconds. That's based off of where they live, right? This isn't just a classroom issue. It affects our entire society when you think of like issues like mass incarceration with the school to prison pipeline, income inequality, wealth disparities, and generational wealth disparities, public health disparities. Everything ties back to education. And so we fundamentally believe that we're trying to genuinely change the conditions that exist on this planet. We have to start with the children. We have to start in the classroom.
All right, so
Right.
the idea is that you can graduate from Penn State with any major at all,
Yes.
and you can apply for Teach for America,
Yeah.
get training,
Yes.
Not like 4 years of training as if you were an education major.
Yeah.
And you can take a job teaching in a school,
Yes.
grade school, elementary school, junior high, or high school.
Yep.
You got to commit to 2 years.
2 years.
Got a rural area, urban area. You get paid the same salary and benefits of whatever teachers are at that school.
Exactly.
So if it's a high-paying school, you're going to make
Yeah.
a decent salary. If it's a lower-paying school, it's going to
Lower
be
salary.
not quite as
Yeah,
good.
most people make between $40,000 to $65,000 a year. All right, that's actually pretty decent right out of the college.
That's not bad, man. Yeah.
And so look, it's a 2-year commitment. The idea is you're making this immediate impact, but even more importantly, you're being impacted and your worldview is shaped and your worldview is changed because instead of just like, hey, I'm just gonna go up this corporate ladder, or I'm just gonna go into this positions or the research, you actually understand what the inequities look like in our communities across the country. Because I'll tell you, most people don't understand how unequal and
Yeah.
unfair the world
Yeah.
is. And so the idea is when you're here, you're seeing it, and it can be very discouraging, but you're getting coaching, resources, and support to make this impact.
So when I'm pushing back against you on some of this stuff about meritocracy and so
Yeah.
on, right? What's really, because earlier in the class, remember when Will said the thing about the camera lens? Hang on. I'm pushing on you,
Yeah.
but I know that you're coming from this space where you see this incredible inequality
Yeah.
that it's just like, man, and that sometimes it just feels like even if you work hard, it just doesn't matter because you see some of these communities that are just so incredibly poor. So listen, I got to get, Javier has something to say, but look, can you guys, look, first off, you, even if you're not graduating, you could find out about this, and it's a really awesome opportunity.
Right.
In your world, though, bro, it'd be lovely if people just got on there and sent something.
So look, I mean, here's the thing. You don't have to do the 2-year teaching commitment, right? There's a lot of different majors here. But if you do, there's a lot of benefits. We can talk more about that later. Other opportunities to engage is that there's a virtual tutoring fellowship, our Ignite Fellowship, where we need people to sign up to tutor elementary school students in English, and middle school students in math, and high school students, because the inequities start young.
And you don't have to be a U.S. citizen
You don't.
to do that.
You have to be authorized to work to do the virtual.
All right,
thing.
okay.
So you have to be authorized to work in the U.S. and it's a virtual opportunity, 3 to 5 hours a week, $1,200 a semester. It's only 10 weeks program, and you're making an impact, and you're getting quick money.
Oh,
so you can
damn,
do
dog.
that, and there's also a summer program. But look, please take a few seconds. Just take 30 seconds. Scan this QR code. Right? Fill out the form. It's going to give me your email. I want to just send you an email with just some resources, right?
And you don't have to follow any of it, man.
You don't got to follow it, and I also need to get credit to show that I was here, so please just do that. And you can show me your phone after you get the completion screen. That'd be great. See my guy in the back already got it finished. Excellent work, man.
All right, bro, you had a comment. No, you can kill the mood. Go ahead, dude.
Excellent. Thanks so much for scanning those. Make sure you fill that out. Submit it, man.
Well,
Wait, now, I actually have a question for you too. How do you feel like that I kind of really pointed out that you guys come from means? Is that fair for me to say that?
I would say that, to be completely honest, I don't really think as I come from means, because at the end of the day, I'm here. But I know the point. I know the point that you're trying to make, from Latinos. I'm being here as a Latino guy, and I know there's definitely more people than me that struggle way more financially than me. So I think it's a good approach, because you're not actually attacking me, but actually trying to point the generalization of my ethnicity.
Yeah, because what happens is we hear Latino and we just put him in the same category. Oh, Latinos. We're always talking about Latinos, the oppression of black people. So same with you. Is it fair that I say that about you?
I think it is. It's important for the conversation. The thing is, I didn't even always grow up having money. It wasn't until 2014.
Yep.
But I always grew up. It was just me and my mom, and it wasn't until recently that we were able to afford these types of things. So I don't know. I feel like I can see both sides, but I also think it's important for you as the facilitator of this conversation to point that out.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to point out the complexity of this race question.
Sam, I think it's so fair and important that you asked that. Yeah.
Dude, hey, can we have a hand for these guys? And if you want to talk to Will afterwards, man. Oh, wait, hang on. Dude, Jeff, can you come here for a second? So people on the stream can see. You can put it up. This is Jeff. Jeff is the guy that makes all. Dude, this is the guy that made the live stream. Nisha keeps it going, but this is the guy who. Jeff Hamill. Dude, what else do I say about you?
Nothing.
Nothing? Dude, this is the guy I rely on that makes the whole thing happen. Yeah. Thanks, man. So, stream.
Subscribe.
Jeff is here.
Subscribe. That's it.
Yeah.